Good morning, good morning. My name is Tahir Duckett. I am the Executive Director at Georgetown Law's Center for Innovations in Community Safety. And on behalf of us, NYU Law's Policing Project, and the Alternative Mobile Services Association, I am so thrilled to welcome you to the third, now annual, Advancing the Field of Alternative Response convening. When we had the first version of this conference at Georgetown Law, we had about 125 people in an oversized conference room at the law school. Last year at NYU, we had about 300, and this year there are 450 of you, and we are, for the first time, off the East Coast and into Chicago. Now, if you are from Chicago or whereabouts, will you please stand? If you are from Chicago or whereabouts, heck yes. See, this is why we did this. Thank y'all so much for welcoming us to your home, for letting us share space with you. Your hospitality means so much to us. We would not be able to do this conference without the support of an incredible group of funders and sponsors. In previous years, I have read out the names of these individually, but now there's just too many of y'all. So you've got it up on the screen. We are incredibly grateful because this group of folks has seen the vision, has recognized the power of this space, and has invested in its growth and development year after year. And of course, convenings like this do not happen without an incredible staff of people. Again, in previous years, I have called out this staff name by name. I can't do that this year. I will miss so many people and get in a whole lot of trouble, but I just want to shout out the folks, you know who you are, who have worked to create this space. Speaking of staff, Scarlett, Anne, Andrea, Mariella, Lucia, if any of you, Amanda, if any of you are in this room, will you please stand? They might all be gathering, folks. There's Scarlett, okay. There's a handful more. I will probably do this again later. Anne is waving in the back. If there is someone that you are hoping to meet and learn from while you are here, let them know and we will try to connect you. Little bit more housekeeping. In your bags, you've got agendas. The agendas have maps on the back. They will show you there's 2 sets of restrooms. Here, there's 2 sets of food areas. This place is, despite its it feels like a confusing layout, but it's actually it's just a big circle. So if you get lost, just keep going, and you will find yourself right back where you started, which feels, as I'm saying it, like a metaphor for something, but I'm not sure what. Yeah, I'm actually gonna take a little bit of a moment, a little point of personal privilege, if you will allow me. So back in December, I had a total knee replacement. So I have a metal knee, my left knee. If you're unfamiliar, it's a gnarly surgery. Somebody said sucks, and that person is correct. There are power tools involved, there's reciprocating saws. I'm gonna spare you the details, but it's a lot. To heal properly from a total knee replacement, you have to work on getting your range of motion back. So starting right after your knee has been through this trauma, all your joint wants to do is sit in this very comfortable space, this really comfortable partial bend. But if you just let it sit like that, you won't be able to do all the things that a fully healed knee should be able to do. You won't be able to run, you won't be able to jump. All that's out of the question unless you do the work to bend and straighten it. There's no way of getting that range of motion back quickly. It's stretching, bending, straightening, bending, straightening, just to the point of pain, and then holding it so that your body can get used to it, and then letting it go and doing it all over again. And while you're in the midst of it, you don't see much of any change at all. You don't really see any change at all. And every day, you look at how much your knee is bending and straightening, and it looks just like it did yesterday. And so that has been me every day for the past 7 months, multiple times a day, going through the pain of stretching this joint, sometimes having days and weeks where it feels worse than it did before, and where it feels like all of this pain and fighting and attention isn't actually doing anything, where I'm squinting to see the progress from the day before and not always being able to find something to keep me going the next day, but still having to wake up and do it again anyway. And then one day you go to the doctor for a checkup, and she does your measurements, and she goes, "Wow, that is so much better than last time." Because while you're in it, every day after day after day, and it felt like nothing was changing, but from the outside you could actually see it. And all that fight was actually leading to making and sustaining progress. So I won't kill the metaphor. I know it's not exactly subtle at this stage. But this conference for me feels kind of like that doctor's appointment, where you get to take a step back and realize, wow, you have made so much progress since last time. So I want to take a little bit of a moment to tell you about the birth of this conference, the story of the birth, both to help root our new friends in what we are doing here, and also because I believe that it is an example of how I hope and how we hope that you will use this space and this precious time together. So back in 2022, Dr. Rebecca Neustaedter of the University of Chicago Health Lab, I think you're in here somewhere. Yes, shout out Chicago. Yes, somewhere. Held a Transform 911 Blueprint launch in New Orleans. And that evening, I found myself having drinks with Freya Richterink of the Policing Project, with Mariela Ruiz Angel and Jasmine Desiderio from Albuquerque Community Safety at the time, Mary Naomi, who's working with Atlanta PAD, and we were all just talking about this field, this fledgling field, and what it needed. And one of the things that everyone agreed was that we needed a space to come together and learn from one another. And that night, that casual night of just getting together and talking about things, began the process that would eventually lead to our 2023 convening and ultimately here. This convening has always been about finding new creative ways of doing things, of walking away from a conversation with a, why not me? Why couldn't we do that? I know you've done so much work to bend and straighten that knee, but I hope that that's something that you can embrace over the course of the next couple of days. Because if I could maybe torture this metaphor just a little bit more, range of motion is just the first step back to a healthy knee. You've got to start to do muscle activation and strengthening and agility and all of these other things beyond just the day-to-day work. And I believe that we are just getting started in this process of healing that trauma. Now, alternative response, or what we at KICS have started have begun calling community crisis response, rests on a simple idea that we shouldn't rely on law enforcement as the default response to anyone who's in crisis. And I don't just mean a clinical crisis. Michelle Perrin at Willamette Valley Crisis Care really helped me expand my thinking on this. She told me that a crisis, that she thinks of a crisis as any time that someone is beyond their capacity to manage a problem themselves. So when someone is in a dispute that they can't handle in Dayton, Ohio, they need the mediation response unit to show up. That's a form of crisis response. And this vision is one that is beginning to spread, or is continuing to spread incredibly rapidly. There are over 140 programs across the nation doing direct dispatch of community crisis response from 911. Hundreds more mobile crisis teams, more programs launching every day. And we're no longer wondering whether we should try to do this, whether it works. Y'all have already answered that question resoundingly, and you continue to answer it each day. Now the question is, how do we ensure resilience amidst federal Medicaid cuts, grant cuts, budget crises at every level of government, political turnover, leadership change? How is it that we ensure permanence? Now, I wish I could just tell you to look underneath your seats. It's right there. I don't have one weird trick. I wish I did. But I will tell you this. The research that we've been conducting here at KICS, we call it KICS for short, the Center for Innovations in Community Safety. The logo's not up there. It's not important. One of the things, the research that we've been conducting at KICS, the partnerships with practitioners and community, and our conversations with policymakers have all led me to believe that part of the answer lies in a recognition that community crisis response is actually best thought of as part of a larger ecosystem of care-based safety interventions. How many of you in here work in or adjacent to community violence intervention work? Right? So we've got a good smattering of hands. I love this. If I would have asked this question 4 years ago, I'm not certain anyone would have raised their hands. How many of you are partnering with Homeless Street Outreach? Right? More. Victim services. So many of you are already experimenting with this idea back home because you're seeing this overlap in approaches. Not identical, right? Not trying to force round pegs into square holes, but recognizing that there is interconnected work that's happening, and that when you do this work, that it's teaching us that there are intersections between victimization, poverty, trauma, recovery, that can't be addressed by one approach alone. And so what this means for permanence, it's because all of these approaches, siloed, are vulnerable. But if they're understood, and if they're understood by the general public at all, that they can feel fly by night. They can feel disconnected from any sort of a broader strategy. But I think that the story that this room is telling is one collectively of addressing root causes of harm. And that's a powerful one. And it's one that's resonating. And I'm seeing it start to show up in everyday conversations. I'm seeing it show up in my group chats that are unconnected, that are not connected to this work. People are understanding that there are tools that we have not been embracing, that we haven't been leveraging, and that is critical. Now, lucky for you, we don't have to just depend on Tahir Duckett's personal opinions to help us get to permanence. Over the course of the next few days, we will talk about sustainability.